Good afternoon. Welcome to the Drum webinar in association with our partners Relay 42, What Marketers Need to Know About DMPs. I'm Justin Pearce from the Drum. DMPs are one of the hottest technologies around. The Drum spends a huge amount of its time covering DMPs and their impact. DMPs data management platforms are essentially just a piece of software, but obviously they go much further and wider than that. They've got hold incredible opportunities for marketers to deliver personalized marketing at scale. The Drum's covered recently a report that said by 2018, 90% of marketers will be using DMPs, but at the same time, we're also covering research that shows that, and also anecdotally hearing, of course, that there are issues with implementation of DMPs. So today we're going to spend the next hour or so digging into what is a DMP anyway, what does it do, how do you implement it, and most importantly, how do you get the most out of it to supercharge your marketing. I'm joined today by three incredible experts in this space. Matilda Kristoffersson, Lead Solutions Architect at Relay 42, Simon Bloom, Commercial Director at UK at Relay 42, and one of their partners, InBeacon. We've got Remco Bron, the CCO and founder. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Simon, but before I do, just remember we love our webinars to be interactive. We want to hear your questions and we'll get to as many as we can at the end of the session. So if you look at your screen on the right hand side, you'll see a little questions box. Please give us your questions. We love hearing them and we'll get to as many as possible at the end. So let's have some fun. Simon, over to you.
Thank you, Justin. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for taking the time this afternoon to join the webinar. For anybody who hasn't yet heard of Relay 42, I wanted to provide a very brief introduction. Founded in 2011, we are a European independent enterprise data management platform vendor. We've grown incredibly quickly over the last 6 years into Germany, into France, the UK, currently expanding into the Nordic region and also into Southeast Asia. Our focus is on the enterprise space, working with advertisers in key verticals such as telcos, utilities and energy, finance and travel. You can see a selection of our customers, global customers, European customers and local customers on the slide in front of you, and we're particularly proud of some of the recent awards over the last 2 to 3 years, which really look to celebrate our growth and the speed of evolution of our company. So by way of a brief agenda today, I'm going to take you through a bit of background in terms of how a DMP can help marketers. We're going to really bring that to life via Matilda, and we're going to go into a customer journey, so a typical use case for a customer journey. We're going to really use that to explore the different touch points within a customer journey and then how a DMP can really help create that more personalized customer experience. We're going to hand over to our valuable partner Remco at InBeacon, who's really going to bring alive the story of how we've worked together in collaboration to extend that technology integration and to extend that customer interaction. We're then going to come back to myself and Matilda, and we're going to talk a bit more about how the platform works, some of the differences, some of the things we feel are important when choosing a DMP. And as Justin said at the start, we would love your questions, so please do take advantage of the question portal on your display. We'll get through as many of those questions at the end as we can. So I guess the biggest challenge, the biggest problem we have now is one that's probably been around for 10, 15 years. It's about delivering the right message to the right person in the right context. And I guess over the last 5 to 6 years, we've seen a proliferation in mobile devices, in tablets, in PCs, a proliferation in marketing channels. We have new emerging channels, so Beacon's no longer new, Beacon's now the norm, but we have out-of-home technologies coming along, and we're constantly having to move and keep pace with this changing landscape. I guess to summarize kind of 5 of the most common challenges we see. So number 1, it's about getting that siloed data from your organization and bringing it into a central area so we can start to activate the first-party data. That typically has been manual and time-consuming. And now we're trying to create a more automated process, a more streamlined process to bring that data in and make it actionable quickly. Typically, it's only been possible to personalize on-site based on recent visit information. And again, we're trying to increase the number of data touch points we can utilize to really paint the true picture of who the customer or visitor is, taking information from offline sources, from your paid media, your own media. The ability to recognize users across devices and platforms is absolutely at the heart of what Relay 42 does. We're extremely proud of our 3rd generation ID management, and Matilda will go into a bit more detail during the presentation as to how that benefits our customers. I guess another key challenge we see and we're trying to solve is the ability to activate data across all channels. And to us, a channel is something, a touch point where your consumer can interact with your brand, can interact with your service, your product, your solution. And those are often different per customer. And finally, for the marketeer, the age-old challenge around attribution, assigning the best spend, the best channel for the most effective return, is a challenge that exists still today, but actually with the DMP, we're starting to try to answer that challenge by creating efficient ways to spend that budget in the right place at the right time. So what makes Relay 42 special? We have, I guess, 3 clear vision statements. Number 1 is to be able to connect to every channel and technology. And every channel and technology to us is every consumer touch point, whether that's your paid media through display and search, whether that's your own media, your website, your mobile apps, whether that's your offline data, your CRM, your data warehouse, potentially those new emerging channels like InBeacons and out-of-home technologies. Relay 42 is a plug-and-play data management platform, which means we plug into your existing ecosystem without disruption. We have over 440 out-of-the-box integrations available, meaning it's very simple to plug and play the Relay 42 DMP into your existing ecosystem. Once we have the data in a single customer view, we use the DMP to start to orchestrate and personalize dialogue with your customers across all channels. And finally, a key USP is about giving ownership of your data back to you, the advertiser, the brand owner. It's your biggest asset. We believe primarily in activating the value in first-party data, data you know about your visitors and customers, but also complementing that with strong second and third-party data offering. Our DMP works. So we don't have a DMP for no reason. The DMP has to drive tangible results. We're going to share some of those results as we go through today's presentation. But a glimpse of some of these results driving click-through rates, reducing the cost of acquisition, and also by having a fast start implementation methodology, allowing us to activate and use the value of that first-party data as quickly as possible. So we're going to hand over to Matilda. Matilda's going to take us through a use case. So this really kind of tries to bring to life the different interactions that a typical visitor or customer can have as they interact with your brand. We're then going to come back and understand a bit more how the DMP can help orchestrate this dialogue throughout the journey.
Great. Thank you, Simon, for that introduction. So basically what we're going to look at now is an example customer journey that we have brought to life for one of our existing travel clients. And we're going to look at the story of Rachel, who is looking to book her dream trip to New York. So looking at Rachel's journey, so what happens is that Rachel, as many other consumers out there in the market, normally starts her journey by browsing on her mobile phone, dreaming of going to a city trip to New York. So what she does is she browses for flights in her trusted airline mobile app. And thanks to the fact that we have our SDK placed in that app, we can then capture any type of interaction that happens. So what we pick up is that Rachel is actually now searching for a flight to New York and also which date she's looking to go. This then creates data that's stored in her profile in the DMP, which we then can use to deliver a relevant message to Rachel. Thanks to the identity management part of the DMP, we can know that Rachel belongs to a certain Facebook ID as well. This enables us to really start using the information we have from the app to synchronize the messaging across channels, and in particular for Facebook. So what we do is we actually target Rachel with a personalized recommendation on Facebook for city breaks. And we obviously include New York because that's the destination she's looking to go to, but we're also including a couple of relevant potential other destinations in the US, given the fact that Rachel is very much still in the research phase of going somewhere within the US. This relevant ad on Facebook triggers Rachel further to go through her journey of actually booking this trip. So what she does is she goes to Skyscanner, and our airline has a second-party agreement with Skyscanner so that they will get data on people who search for a trip, and in this case pick up which destination they're looking to go to for which dates. And what we can do then with the DMP is we can use this data, so it's stored real time into the DMP, and what we do is we build a dynamic ad in the DMP, which is then served via the DSP, in this case DoubleClick. Sorry, we had a quick slide change, and it's served as a dynamic display on the Telegraph. This means that Rachel, when she browses through to the Telegraph to read her daily news, she will also see a really relevant display ad serving her a message about a really beneficial price of going to New York with her preferred airline. Obviously, this really relevant ad triggers Rachel to click through. So she clicks through via the Telegraph. The DMP picks up the fact that she's clicking through via this specific ad. And thanks to the integration with the CRM, we also know that Rachel is a gold member. So what we do is we activate the personalization tool on the website to make sure that Rachel gets a personalized experience, which includes having a background of New York, but also showing that gold members are currently getting an extra beneficial offer for flying long-haul flights to the US. This obviously is very interesting to Rachel, but so she starts to book this trip. But as so many other people can relate to, she gets distracted and disrupts her booking. This then includes Rachel to be part of an abandoned booking segment, which triggers an email to be sent together with an urgency message on seat availability, telling Rachel that there's only 3 seats left at this incredibly beneficial rate for gold members to New York, and she should go ahead and take advantage of this offer right now. Obviously, she does, so she goes ahead and books her flights. And ping, mission accomplished. Rachel is now on her way for her dream trip to New York. At the day of Rachel's flight, she arrives at the airport, and the airline that we're working with have integrated beacons at the airport so that they know when their customers are physically arriving at the airport to get ready for their flights. So this is really about bridging the offline and the online world in a completely new way. Based on that, we now know that Rachel actually is on the airport. We give her a targeted message for an upsell offer for her to buy additional Wi-Fi on the plane. And this she gets as a push notification via the mobile app in her phone. So looking at this entire customer journey of Rachel fulfilling her dreams of going to New York, the last step is including Beacon to really integrate that offline and online world. This might sound really futuristic and something that's far ahead in the future, but actually it's really something of the now. So I'm going to hand over to Remco from InBeacon, our partner who helps us realize these kind of beacon integrations. So he can tell you about that the fact of using beacons for your marketing is really something that you should be looking to do today, and it's not something big and scary for the future.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Remco Bron. I'm the co-founder of InBeacon. We are an offline touchpoint management platform. What we do basically is we manage beacon networks, make sure that you can do relevant campaigns and do different beacon interactions. If we look at the next slide, what we try to accomplish together with our partner Relay 42 is make a true connection between the digital and the physical world. This is something that a lot of people have been talking about in the last couple of years. It does sound a little bit still like the future, but it's really here now to be done. If we look at how we close the loop on the next slide between online and offline, there is so much that we already know about a customer from just our marketing systems. For example, we know web browsing and search results like we saw. We can do things on social media. We can change the content. We can do stuff with online advertising, but also with sales, especially when you have a loyalty card. But on the next slide, you'll see that we create also the location there, and we make sure that on the location you can actually measure and see what is going on. But not only limited to measuring if somebody is there, you can also use it to in your other ecosystems to make that more relevant. And I'll get into that a little bit more later on with 2 short case studies that we've done. But on the next slide we will see the proximity actions that you can actually do, because when beacons first came around about 3 years ago now, the first thing that a lot of people talked about was sending push messages when you passed a beacon. Now, while sending a push message is very valuable and can add a lot of value to any type of campaign, we found that the push notification needs to be extremely relevant for the consumer to be able to actually want to do something with it. If it's not relevant, then people will either perceive it as spam, which is basically the worst case scenario, but usually they will just disregard it. But when it's really there and it's really on point, really relevant to the context that the person is in, that's when it really works out the best, and that's why we have the tools to create that relevant layer on top of the context. But we also work around push a lot of times. For example, we can use dynamic signage and clienteling to change the environment of the person. So what we do, for example, with dynamic signage is change the digital screens in stores based upon the profile, and together with Relay 42 we can actually change that based upon, for example, your browsing profile. So if you've looked at a particular type of shoe on the website, you haven't actually purchased them there, but then you walk into the store, we can change the digital signage based upon that preference. Clienteling works kind of the same way, but it's the other way around, where you show it as a customer service notification. So what you can then do is show the customer service employees that this person has been looking at that type of shoe in the case of the shoe example. But you can also use it, for example, to see if somebody has upgraded to a business class ticket and grant them direct access, or even welcome them personally to a business class lounge without them having to show the ticket. But just because you're in the vicinity of a beacon, we can show that on a screen that, hey, this is Remco, he has just upgraded to a business class ticket and he is now has access to the lounge. Lastly, what we also do is remarketing and retargeting. Remarketing is basically the email types of things that we saw earlier. Retargeting is basically physical retargeting. So you've been at a specific place. Based upon that, we will show a different ad for example, in an app or even on in a website with Relay 42. Now, on the next slide, you'll see that the way that InBeacon is positioned in this is purely as a platform. So we are in between the offline locations where the beacons or geofences are placed. We also work with geofences and other sensor technologies. We hook into apps with a very lightweight SDKs that can be integrated. We integrate in apps of our customers, but we also integrate in media apps. So here in the Netherlands we have a few of the largest newspaper and news apps who have integrated our technology, and they can be used for retargeting as well. We also create a personal profile, but that personal profile can also be exported to any type of business system, or for example to Relay 42. Just like Relay 42, we also keep our customers in complete control of their data. So all data that's generated through the platform can be exported and is always in ownership of the data. Now, if you look at on the next slide to one of the cases that we've done, it's actually a digital signage case that we've done for Colruyt supermarkets in Belgium. The way this works is that they integrated our SDK in their shoppers app, and based upon what type of products you put on the shopping list in the shoppers app, we actually show either white wine or red wine deals when somebody walks past a digital sign. So we really create on the spot we create a different type of advertisement in the store while people are shopping. You will see on the red part, you will see Selectie for Steven, which Steven is obviously the name of the person. That didn't make it to production. We found out that that doesn't really test well with customers. So you don't want to show their name, even though you know who the person is who's walking by. Don't show their name on a public screen. You might also be wondering if we if there's like 10 people walking past, we just take an average for the people who's walking past to show either a red wine or a white wine deal. Now in the left-hand bottom of the screenshot that you see, there's also a recipe that goes great with that particular wine. We placed a beacon next to the screen or behind the screen, and all people have to do is keep their phone by the screen, and it shows the same recipe with all the details directly on the phone in the app. Now, that's something that's extremely easy for us to do because the recipe is already in the app. And all we see is that you hold your phone next to that specific recipe, so we just pop that one up. But to customers, this really seemed like something magic because they figure it's beaming from the screen to their phone or something like that, while it's a very easy interaction for us to do. This is currently in production at Colruyt Supermarkets at one of their stores and in their headquarters. Now the next case that I want to highlight is the case that we've done for Coca-Cola in the Netherlands. We work with Coca-Cola a lot. They are very ahead of their times when it comes to beacons, and one of the questions that they asked us was that when we sample new drinks, they do a lot of sampling actions here in the Netherlands, and when they do that, they never have a way to reconnect with that customer again. So what we did is we created, together with a couple of big media apps here in the Netherlands, because Coca-Cola didn't have their own app to use for this, together with the media apps, we created a campaign where people would walk by a beacon. Basically, when they grabbed a sample from one of the samplers, the sampler had the beacon in their pocket or it was on the sampling station. And when people walked past, that's when we would tag them digitally, of course. we would tag them and we could retarget those people. Cool thing was that we couldn't only retarget them with an advertisement, but we also had a deal with the retailer who actually sold the cans that they were sampling on the railway stations here in the Netherlands. And by placing beacons in that in the retail space, we also could measure the conversion from sampling back to the store, back to the cash register. So you don't only create a retargeting campaign that's extremely relevant and is only seen by people who actually grab the sample during the sampling period, but you can also measure the effect of the digital campaign that you do across different platforms to see if it draws people actually towards the store and people actually go to the cash register. We've also added a coupon based deal there, and what happened with the coupons is we could actually also measure transactions. We see then when we do one of those retargeting campaigns, we see higher click-through rates across the board, especially when it comes to in-app advertisements, because as you might know, in-app advertisements are really hard to make work well, but using these retargeting techniques, you create a very relevant campaign which shows usually a click-through rates which are 100 to 400% higher than a normal campaign. Now, bringing that back on the next slide to how we work together with Relay 42 is that Relay 42 really, next slide please, Relay 42 really brings into show the digital world, so anything with ads, online behavior, CRM and call centers are handled on their end. We really bring into view the physical world, so we create or we measure the visits, the location-based behavior of the person, so you can also see where they are in the store, how many times they return, etc. And that way we can create a true omni-channel customer journey. So we can not only show you how your customer has been through the online customer journey, but also how they go to offline and maybe back to online again. So on the next slide, we can do anything from digital to physical. So somebody likes a Facebook page, we measure that, and we measure if that person actually walks into the retail space, how often they return, and based upon that behavior, we can either do a digital campaign with relay in different ways. On the next slide, we can also do it the other way around. So you can use the physical space as the first trigger, and then because somebody has done something in a physical space, you can trigger a digital campaign. And on the next slide, you'll see we also do that, for example, with out-of-home advertising and other different types of outdoor advertisings that you can do. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in store. It can also be at a conference. It can be at a booth at a conference, at any type of space, basically, that is physical. And in the next slide, you'll see we have also the dynamic content that you can show, like we saw in the case of the traveler. So concluding, the partnership. Next slide, please. The partnership with Relay 42 really gives you next level ideas. It's something completely new. Where we can basically, together with Relay 42, create that true customer journey. And what we've seen is from working with customers is that we really haven't seen the limit of the potential yet. So there are still new ideas coming in that we can actually do with this technology and bring that customer journey in better focus, but more importantly, be more relevant to the customer, create more context for the customer, or better context for the customer, and create better campaigns, and that way really become successful. So with that, I want to give it back to Relay to show how that works in a DMP system as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Remco, for elaborating on one of the many channels that we integrate with, and looking at how many incredible opportunities there are just within one of those single channels as a beacon technology. So looking at how a DMP solution actually works, we have some InBeacon takeover here. Here we go. Looking at how a DMP solution actually works, and in particular how our DMP solution actually works, this is a very high-level overview. So a DMP, how we see it, is really about helping you as a company to create this single customer view. So any type of data that's stored in the DMP is always done in relation to a unique customer profile. And the data we store in the DMP is, of course, comes from a wide range of sources. But normally, the foundation is starting to collect behavior on your own channels, such as website and app. This we do via the Relay 42 tag for all of your web environments and the SDK in your app. So it's really about being able to collect any type of behavior, any type of interaction that your customers or potential customers are showing within your own channels, and then storing that in a unique customer profile. The true core of what a good DMP should be is the identity management. So in order to solve the challenge that Simon presented earlier of the lady who looked a little bit confused with her phone and her laptop, it's of course to really truly knowing who someone is across all of these channels. And this is done via our third generation identity management. We do this a little bit differently than other companies because we do it from a really kind of flexible layer perspective. So we do it profile-based rather than cookie-based. This means that any identifiers can be stored in the customer profile, and they're not tied to a single identifier in order to have that profile live on. So this means that if someone deletes their cookies or adds a new email address to their account, this does not mean that the profile is lost or a new profile is automatically created, but rather we just work with all of the identifiers that we have for one single customer and bring that into one profile. The key of the identity management is also to know which language each of these different systems that a DMP connects to talks. So if you look at the line of logos that you have on your right side, these are examples of channels that we as a DMP connect with. So you have obviously your customer interaction channels such as CRM and call center. You have email and programmatic marketing, including both display and video. Obviously, we also integrate with social. So the case with Rachel included Facebook. We, as you know by now, integrate with beacon and location technologies as well to really bridge the offline-online gap. We integrate with your search channels, any other kind of external data providers. So this means second and third party data. As well as your intelligence in your data warehouse, looking at point of sales, and as well as your customer chat. So essentially the list of the technologies that a DMP as Relay42 integrates with is only limited by the amounts of channels that you're using. And the identity management basically works in a way that it talks in each of these channels different languages. So each of these different channels will have their own identifier for a customer. And what we do in the single customer profile is really bring it all together in one. So for instance, in the case of Rachel, we had her browsing the app. Generally, when someone downloads the app, normally what they have to do in the first case scenario is log in. This means that we know Rachel's email address. So what we then can do is correlate all the channels that use email as an identifier. Normally this means we can then know who she is in CRM. We can know obviously who she is in an email system, but also a channel like Facebook uses hashed email as their way of identifying customers. So then just by the fact that she's downloaded the app and using the app, we can then also activate her on a channel like Facebook. And then obviously, as what I just said, activate, that's obviously also a key cornerstone to what a DMP should do. So bringing together your customers into true single customer views via the identity management, tracking any type of behavior to be as relevant and recent as possible, but then really activating these profiles across all the channels that you're using as well. So this we do via the customer journey engine, where you, as a marketeer and an advertiser, set up your own business logic for who you want to target, what message you want to give the group you're targeting, and where you want to target them. So basically on the right side hand, obviously we integrate with them to get data input on to know who someone is, but we also activate these channels back again so that you as a marketeer and an advertiser can be truly relevant across all of these channels to your customers. On top of that, we also have certain learning algorithms which helps you to be even more relevant. So in the case of Rachel, we saw that she also got a couple of other recommendations for destinations in the US, and this can of course go much further as well to calculate what's the next best action, which channel should I activate if she didn't reply or if she didn't open my email, etc. So it's really about also applying the data that you have in the DMP to kind of almost think for you to explore new possibilities of how you can be the most relevant towards your customers. And obviously, Simon already mentioned, we are a plug-and-play independent enterprise DMP. This means that examples of what these icons really translate to in real life are immense. These are some of the examples of the systems that we integrate with, but it can help you to really get an idea, and sometimes if you're not active within all of these channels in your organization, you will almost always recognize some of these logos and go like, okay, now I get what search is. Okay, now I get what the data warehouse is, and then you can relate to it a little bit more. So these are some of the examples of all the channels that we integrate with.
Thanks, Matilda. So I guess we're almost towards the end of our initial presentation, so please keep the questions coming in. We can see there's a number of really great questions here which we're going to get round to in the next 5 minutes or so. I guess in Justin's introduction at the start, we talked very much about DMP being a hot topic. I think there's lots of different versions and takes on what a DMP is, and I wanted to kind of share with you before we finish today what Relay 42 believes a DMP should be, and the 4 kind of key questions or areas that you should consider when choosing a DMP. So I think we mentioned at the start, ownership of your data. This is something Relay 42 places a great deal of emphasis on. Number 1, it's about owning your data, so you being in charge of your data. It's also about Relay 42 not sharing that data with anybody else. So we don't share that data with your competitors. We don't sell that data on a third-party basis. We collect the data on your behalf. We store it securely on your behalf, and at all times you're the owner of that data, which gives you great compliance and security perspective. Also with GDPR looming on the horizon in 2018, it also provides a degree of compliance around what will be a slightly more strict data and privacy security policy. Secondly, we want you to be relevant to all of your consumers across the channels that they want to interact with you on. So we hear the term omni-channel or multi-channel. We believe that the role of a DMP should be to truly allow personalization at real time or in real time at scale across the channels that are most important to your customers. And we almost want to create a vision of a segment of one and start to create that one-to-one dialogue with that particular customer or visitor. I think we've mentioned this a few times now, but absolutely core to our vision at Relay 42 is the ability to plug and play and to give our customers or advertisers the freedom to plug and play the Relay 42 DMP into their existing ecosystem. We don't want you to replace big chunks of your existing technology just to comply with the Marketing Cloud. We want you to be able to plug in our DMP to be able to deliver at scale a really personalized customer experience utilizing the best-in-class solutions that you already have access to and that you've already spent money on investing in, choosing and working with. And finally, a nod back to Remco and his great section on beacons. We have to be constantly looking towards the future. The nature of the plug-and-play DMP from Relay 42, the openness of our platform both to push data out but also to connect to other touch points means that we truly believe we are a future-proofed DMP. Beacons are no longer the future. Beacons are here and now, and Remco showed the benefits of those today. We start to look at Internet of Things. It's a large generic term for new and emerging technologies, and we see things like the Amazon Echo and Alexa out-of-home devices as new touch points. We see interactive fridges as new touch points. These are effectively new consumer touch points that generate data that allow us to understand more about the customer and the visitor to really personalize their experience. That's all from Relay 42. Before we go, we wanted to share, I guess, some of the KPIs, some of the valuable results that we provide to our customers. Typically, these come in KPIs such as revenue increases. So we have published case studies that are available on our website, which talk about some of our work in the travel, finance, utilities, and telecom space that really look to show how we've been able to increase revenue for certain customers, how we've been able to increase conversion for customers. We're also about marketing efficiency, to how do we reduce advertising spend and increase return on investment. I'd like to thank everyone today for joining the webinar. I'd like to thank the Drum for hosting the webinar. And we'd now like to open up to questions that we've received during the session.
Thanks very much, both of you. That was a superb deep dive into DMPs, and we've unsurprisingly had questions pouring in from all sides. So I'm going to pick some of the best of these, some of the ones I think the most interesting. And first of all, starting, this is from Ali, and he says, I love the example of Rachel and how the travel industry are using DMPs, but what other vertical sectors are you seeing that are doing this best?
I think it's not really about who's doing it best, but I think each vertical or each industry comes with its own possibilities and limitations, challenges, etc. So we saw a typical journey for a travel client. Many of our other clients, for instance, in finance, if you look at the journey itself, it doesn't really change that much. It's more about maybe the life cycle and the type of products that you're working with. And of course, most importantly, the identity moment of these customers. So if you look at clients that we have in retail, obviously their identification moment is way more rare than for a finance client who has a customer who logs in 4 times a week. So I think when looking at a DMP, it's more important to look at your organization. What are your strategies and ambitions for the future? Is this really, do you believe in the approach of the omnichannel relevant strategy? And do you have data that supports you to start with that. So really looking into what are the silos within my organization and what kind of value would I get from breaking these silos. It sounds very rough, but opening up these silos across the board and really start bringing relevant messaging to each individual.
Fantastic. Now let's go to a bit of a different slant. This is from Elizabeth, and it's something that we've been covering a lot on the drum, and we know that a lot of the industry are worried about this. It's the impact of the new privacy regulations, the impact of GDPR. So that's to either of you or to Remco on the line. What impact do you think GDPR will have on DMPs in general, on this sector in general?
Yeah, no, great question. I think one we hear on a very regular basis now. So GDPR is something that is looking to come in 2018. At Relay 42, we've been thinking about this for a number of months now. I think with regards to the Relay 42 DMP, from the data ownership point of view I mentioned earlier, it's really important for our customers, for our advertisers to have complete control and ownership of their data. So one of the components of GDPR will be around where data is stored, the type of data that's stored, the ability and preference to not store PII, for example, within the DMP, which we already comply to. Other elements of GDPR will include things like bringing in privacy officers dedicated to focusing on the advertiser data, and we've already done that at Relay 42 on our side to create that privacy policy, and we'll be publishing that over the coming weeks. Furthermore, I think with the proliferation of channels, so we heard about beacons today, but with out-of-home technologies coming on in the future, again, the ability to plug and play in a secure environment to be able to not collect that PII, but to be able to use hashing to allow us to collect that information, but to use it in a realistic and valuable way, is ultimately going to be how we can continue to deliver a great service, a great relevant dialogue with our customers, but to stay the right side of the GDPR law.
Fantastic.
In terms of beacons, just to add really quickly, beacon technology is fully opt-in, so it's up to the customer or the consumer to actually use it or not use it, so they're in full control on that end. In terms of the data, we are also working on being compliant to the rules that are coming in. But like I said earlier, with the integration with Relay 42, we will be fully integrated with them so that you have one point basically where the data is stored. So as long as that point is the privacy is worked out like a Relay is working on, then on that end you're fully covered as well for the new regulations.
Fantastic. Remco, seeing as you're on the line, I've got a question here from Rachel, and she said she loves the way you're talking about using this sort of technology at conferences. She does a lot of big events and can see some great applications here. Could you go into some more detail, please?
Specifically for conference, is this the same Rachel that booked the flight, by the way, in the example?
Maybe it is. She's everywhere. She's everywhere.
No, it's specifically for large events. What we do is we create a double layer, basically. What we do is, first of all, interactive things with the people who are there at that point. So you can do different things with push messaging. You can also do different things with the clientele. On the clienteling side, you can actually move away from queues because you can see who is coming in. Now, if it's a lot of people, that might not be the greatest thing. But when it comes to smaller workshops or side events, that works really well. We're actually working with the Web Summit on that end as well to see if we can offer a solution for that for them. But most interesting, I think personally, is the data that you get out of it, because especially with conferences that have sponsors, and usually most conferences do nowadays, that have a booth, for example, you can really give them an extra layer of not only interaction but also of data. So you can show who actually visited their stand. One of the implementations that we did is that we notified the people on the stand, not when somebody entered the stand, because that happens hopefully every minute of the day. but we would notify them when somebody returns. So in this case, we made a business rule where if somebody was at the stand that same day and had been there for 5 minutes and now returns to the stand, that one of the people got, or all of the people actually got a message saying that, okay, this person is really interested, because that, that really shows interest. So in that way, we actually try to create extra context layers for events.
Fantastic, excellent answer. So moving on to the next question. This is from Clive, and Clive, you've asked lots of questions. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we can't ask them all, but we'll try and get through a few of them. Clive asks, what device graph features do you have at Relay 42? I don't know who wants to take that, if indeed you do.
Yeah, I'll let Matilda take that. She's far cleverer than me.
Okay, so essentially, this for everyone to understand as well, so the device graph relates very much to the identity management and the identification across different devices. So how we do the identity management is in a deterministic way. So to give you a background, there are two options, either deterministic or, difficult word, probabilistic. And the deterministic is saying, okay, we take an actual identification moment and we use that as a trigger to merge two different profiles into one. So logging in, converting, clicking through via an email, etc. And probabilistic is more looking at, this is most likely the same person, so let's go ahead looking at different kind of data models, looking at different kind of behavior. And then we also have device graphs, which we rely on external partners, given our strategy of really separating client data into their own separate environments, which then will have mapped for different devices to different individuals across different devices, so to say, and this is a way that you as a company can use. So for instance, we work with partners such as Screen6, Drawbridge, etc., where we integrate that into the platform to kind of kickstart that cross-device matching, so that you will know immediately when someone comes to the website that, oh, this is actually also someone who belongs to this specific mobile device. So that's how we go about it, really relying once again on strong partnerships rather than trying to invent something from scratch ourselves when there's great players out there doing it in a good way.
Fantastic, excellent answer. There's been a few questions coming in here about IoT. So you're talking about IoT, Internet of Things, got fridges, we've got basically everything's going to be connected, everything can provide data to essentially feed into a DMP, I guess. So lots of different people asking questions around that and wanting some more information, especially if there's any issues here about personal IDs and cookies not being on devices like TVs. So anyone want to go into more of that? What's the IoT, Internet of Things, really going to offer for marketers in this realm?
Well, I think IoT is still something that's in a very exploratory phase, I would say. I think technologies such as InBeacon will surely play a part in bridging that gap as well. Obviously, what you're looking at with IoT is, I guess, in an initial phase, more as a data source into your DMP. So you probably have to register that product together with an email address or similar, which helps us to know that it belongs to a certain person, and then you use that as input data. The second step, obviously, looking a couple of years ahead in the future, would be that you have a refrigerator that has a screen on the front which tells you that you're low on milk, but also then maybe has specific advertisements. So basically it's a similar programmatic bidding on your refrigerator as on what you see on a telegraph today.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, in terms of what Matilda said, I think the Relay 42 approach is probably not to predict the future, but to have a flexible open solution that's customer driven. So our product roadmap at Relay 42 is very much customer led. So Beacon technology as the example, and hence why we have our great partner Remco on the call today. Yeah, that was a feature that our customers really wanted to take advantage of, and we were able to prioritize that through our agile development methodology to bring that to fruition for our customers. And I think we're currently doing a POC and trial with the Amazon Echo device to understand how can we bring that data in, how can we take advantage of that valuable data that consumers are starting to generate from devices such as those out-of-home devices. I think rather than try to predict what's coming next and what's the value of Internet of Things, it's to have an open and flexible solution and architecture that allows us to add new channels, under this big umbrella of Internet of Things as and when they come along, and that really is for the betterment of our customers.
Fantastic. I've got a question here from John, and John asks, you've been talking a lot about first and second party data. Is this ingested and activated in real time?
Yes, John, it is.
Very simple. That's it. That's what you need to know.
No, so our approach and our vision is that everything that's done with the Relay 42 DMP should happen in real time. Obviously, there are limitations looking at your first-party data online. Absolutely, 100% should be collected real time, and is as well with the tag and the SDK. Same goes for second-party data. So any kind of second-party partnerships that you have will then also be collected with a second-party collector tag, which realizes that data is collected real time so that you as a company can act upon it immediately rather than when it's too late. Looking at your offline first-party data sources, obviously we are definitely integrating that real-time with our real-time API integration, but it can also be that you, as a company, prefer to just do it via a batch. So that means that your CRM data points, such as name, gender, etc., which you generally don't expect changes on a real-time basis, but rather something that you as a company are happy to update on a weekly basis. So even though real-time is absolutely the most attractive option, we offer everything from arrange to real-time to whatever fits your company needs.
I think, just to provide a bit of addition to that, a great answer, Matilda. I think, I think there's a huge amount of buzz in the UK market currently in the DMP space around the value of third-party data. So I think in Relay 42, we've constantly focused on activating the value of first-party data. That's very much our strategy. We see huge benefits in creating and brokering really valuable partnerships between brands and second-party data sources. So, between a travel brand and potentially something like Skyscanner, between a financial services brand and something like Money Supermarket or Go Compare. So those natural partnerships where there are information about your potential customers or visitors that are very relevant. And I think we hear a lot of noise in the market around the value of third party. And really, for us, third party is that layer that allows us to generate, I guess, greater reach, more attribute information about our visitors. And so recently we've created partnerships with Axiom and Nielsen to now have that strong enterprise third-party data offering into our vision. So very much a player in the first and second-party space, and now bringing to market that third-party component as well. We hope that's really going to help us move forward now in the UK and beyond.
Fantastic. Got a question here from Mohit, and she asks for any advice on particularly how food companies can use this sort of technology and approach well.
Yeah, so actually we have a couple of FMCG clients, and obviously there is it's a different type of strategy that you would apply compared to a traditional airline or a finance client, but generally what we see is that there are many things that you can use a DMP for to increase your reach. So obviously you want your brand to reach as many people as possible, but obviously you want to reach the right people as well. So we're seeing a lot of connection with different kind of loyalty programs that might be running on sitting somewhere in the basement, connecting email addresses to purchases, etc. And that can really be activated with the help of a DMP, and also be used to create lookalike modeling, which really helps you to increase your reach based on a really relevant person as a starting point. So these are some of the options that we see, and obviously also looking at bridging that online-offline gap using either some kind of loyalty system or any other, and also of course picking up different kind of indicators of interest about these consumers on different recipe websites, etc. So we're seeing this as a really a different challenge than what the traditional companies have in the market, but definitely a DMP is a great asset to that strategy for food companies as well.
Superb. I've got a question here from Louise. I guess she's asking, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek. She says, the selection for Stephen made me laugh. That was the example, Remco, you gave when you had this selection is for Stephen on the additional signs in the supermarket store, and you realised that was a bit scary. So Louise says, what other tips do you have to make this stuff not creepy? Again, tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, and that's something that's interesting. There is with beacons, there's always a creepy line, as we call it, and you don't want to cross it, but you always kind of want to push it. To us, what we do is we basically use common sense. What would you like yourself, and we test it on customers. But the real thing that that shows is that if you want to show personal information, or if you want to use somebody's name, and they don't have a clue how you got that, don't use it. It seems really common sense, but if you do that, people are going to question how you got it, and you really don't want to think about that much. The other thing is that we usually, when we do something with personalization, we do it on the mobile device. So we don't do it on public screens. I mean, that's also kind of common sense, but it's important to know that. But there's also there's ways of just doing something without them really knowing how it works, and there's something magic to that. To elaborate more on the travel industry as well, is that we're working with Schiphol Airport, Amsterdam Airport right now, who have 2,100 beacons installed that are managed with our system. And what we can do with them, for example, is to, if you have your flight in one of the apps, either an airline app or the Schiphol app itself, we can show your specific flight on a screen, so you don't have to actually go to the screen and look through the hundreds of flights that are on that screen that are departing, but your departure is actually only shown on that screen, and somebody passes along with me, that other departure is shown on that screen as well. That's very powerful, but don't show in front of it, this is the flight of Remco, and this is the surfing behavior of Remco and stuff like that. We're not ready for that. There is going to be a time that we're ready for that, but for now, people see it too much as a minority report.
Excellent, Remco. Thank you very much. We're coming towards the end of time. I've got one more question I'd like to get in, just a bit of housekeeping. I've had a few questions asking, are we going to send around a replay or recording of the webinar? Yes, everyone registered will get an email tomorrow, crossing fingers, tomorrow, with the recording of this webinar. And also, just wanted to pass on that if you wanted to reach out directly to Simon, you know, he's answering as many questions as he can, but we can't get through them all. His email is s.bloom@relay42.com, so please bombard him with all the questions you have. Now, this is from Scott. This may be last question. We always get these sort of questions when we do any webinar on sort of the latest thinking in digital. And Scott asks, what about B2B? It's that simple. You know, generally you see so many great case studies and examples on consumer brands, but what role is DMPs playing in B2B marketing?
So obviously, once again, it provides different types of challenges, etc. And I think what you're seeing with B2B is that sometimes there's not as rich data sets as there is with B2C. Obviously, that proposes different possibilities of using a DMP, but we still see many of the same issues within B2B, that there are several siloed data hubs within the organization, many different touch points, a little bit longer cycle purchasing cycles, yep. Saying the right word. So basically what we're seeing is it adds value, but it has a different strategy than it has for B2C. That's definitely clear. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, I mean, we have a number of customers that have, for example, in the financial services sector, corporate banks within their financial services brand, and yeah, the challenge is there is no different necessarily to B2C. I think in terms of the channels that B2B utilize and activate, sometimes different, but again, with the plug and play philosophy, we can obviously plug into those channels as relevant. I think to Matilda's point, the issue of having siloed data within an organization is the same, whether it's B2B or B2C. And that last component, ultimately, we want to understand the individuals even within the B2B space. So actually advertising, creating a message, creating a dialogue, a humanized dialogue with those individuals, B2B is highly relevant. And again, we'll be publishing a case study later this year, specifically around the corporate banking side of our work.
Thank you so much. Well, it just leaves me now to say thank you so much to our three fantastic panelists today. I hope you all learned something about DMPs, and I hope you want to go and start turning them on immediately. Before we sign off again, s.bloom@relay42, that's Simon's email. You can totally bombard him. So thank you so much for listening, and hope to see you all again soon. Goodbye.